Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day you're listening to this, you're probably here to get some tips on how to create a data strategy for your organization. What we're going to present here today is our suggested approach to your data process, and hopefully this will help you get started with your data strategy. So before we get into the data process, let's talk about why data matters. Data can help you to optimize how you run your business and can help you make better strategic decisions. Some of the ways data does this is through measuring performance by tracking key metrics that are driving your business, increase efficiency by optimizing the things that show better results, gain insights into things that drive performance and why they do so, and understand your donors or clients and engage them in a better way. These are just some of the ways that data can help your organization. So what is data? For our purposes, let's think of data in two ways. There's quantitative data. These are numbers, things that can be measured and counted. And then there's qualitative data, things that can be observed but not measured. The example of qualitative data is the color of a dog or the quality of a meal. So what we're going to show you today is a way to think about data at your organization. Again, this is our suggestion of how to think about your data process. The framework we will go through looks at your data process in three stages. First, there's the planning of your data strategy. Your overall business objective should inform your data strategy. Once you've done this, you can follow up with the next step. The next step is preparing your data. This step is about collecting what's relevant to your organization, your mission, and your stakeholders, keeping it clean and fresh, and storing it in an appropriate, safe, and secure place. Once you have this in place, you can finally get to the final stage, which is executing your data strategy. This is when you analyze your data to answer your business questions and execute the tactics that fulfill your data strategy. In the end, you will want to measure how these are performing and report it back to the appropriate audience. One thing to note is that despite it being the first step in the process, your data strategy is something that encompasses the entire process. At any point, outcomes of the other steps may give you reason to revisit your data strategy. Another important thing we want you to keep in mind as we go through this is that this framework isn't necessarily to build out a super sophisticated data machine. Since this is iterative, start with what you're comfortable with or have the resources to do. You always want to keep in mind where you are today in terms of data, where you want to be tomorrow, and what are the important measures you need to get you there. So let's go deeper on data strategy. So data strategy is concerned with identifying all the elements of data you need to help you operate your business. It's meant to answer the business questions that may come from your overall business strategy. In your data strategy, you want to think about how you will collect, clean, and store your data. What analyses will help you answer your business questions? What tactics will be executed as a result of the insights gained from your analyses? And finally, how you will measure and report the performance of your strategy. Now let's talk about how to plan your data strategy. The following is a suggested outline of the things to talk about when planning a data strategy that supports your organization's overall strategy. Hypothesis and measurements. Identify key business problems that require data and analysis. Ensure that all parts of your organization are involved in the planning. Understand how data and analytics can help answer these problems. What data do you need to answer the business problems, and what analysis needs to be done? Decide how answers to the problems will be measured, what will be your key performance indicators and your metrics. Who will do this? Is there someone in your organization right now that can undertake the data and analytics work you need? It is key to have someone capable of doing the required work or to plan your strategy based on your organization's current level of ability. Identify technical needs and the type of personnel needed to meet these needs. Data policy. Establish governance, ownership, roles and responsibilities with respect to data. Decide who to allow access to the data and how they will access the data. You want to establish a culture that discourages data hoarding. Create a high standard of data integrity, and develop a sound policy around security and privacy, one that must be established and adhered to. Data architecture is something that's a little bit more on the technical side, but it's very important. Establish appropriate data architecture. So what that means is you need to look at what data is collected, how is it stored, arranged, integrated, and put to use in your data systems. If your organization has already been collecting data, these principles still must be considered in relation to what is already being done and if it will work for your business needs or your data strategy. You need to think about what systems will be needed to implement the data architecture and the desired analytics that come out of it. Plan for the future. This goes alongside your data architecture. You need to think about what data needs your organization can anticipate and plan for those needs. What questions will need to be answered in the future? Are the right data being collected for these future needs? Are the systems and resources appropriate for future data and analysis? And what will be the KPIs for these future needs? You should plan for analysis that will determine how to use your data further. Automate as much as possible. Implementation. Implementation should have the same level of attention as implementing any other strategy in your organization. Choose an appropriate project management methodology, provide appropriate resources for success to the team members responsible for implementation, and set a realistic timeline that is guided by business needs. You want to determine outcomes that can measure the success. One final note about data strategy is this. Although this may sound daunting and very technical, remember to build a data strategy that is right-sized for your organization right now. Remember that this data process is iterative, and the data strategy can be revisited at any time. So if you're just getting started, your data strategy may be just to determine what kind of things you can do with data, and not necessarily build out your entire data infrastructure immediately. Your next iteration may be to execute the basics, and it may take several iterations before you have sophisticated data architecture. Take your time and be focused on what can actually be done honestly right now. Once you have your data strategy in place, the first thing to think about is data collection. So data collection is about gathering information across your business that will support your data strategy. This can be anything from collecting supporter information and their history with your organization to data from programs being executed or even surveys, event data, or financial data. You may be collecting some of this information already. Collecting diverse data from your business helps you to better understand what is driving your business and helps answer the questions of your overall business strategy. When thinking about your data collection, you have to remember to collect data that matters. Let's take a look at an example of a social impact goal and how to think about data collection. In this example, we're imagining we have an impact goal at Furniture Bank. So Furniture Bank collects gently used furniture and household goods from homes like yours and mine and transfers them to families who have either recently transitioned out of homelessness, are newcomers or refugees, or women and children exiting abusive situations. The impact goal is this: ensure that all Canadians live with dignity and comfort of a furnished home. While I go through the output, outcome, and impact of this goal, I'd like for you to think about what sort of data we should collect to measure these things. So first, the output. We want to know the number of households provided with required furniture in their homes. Next, the outcome. The outcome is for a client to become more socially connected, for them to have a space to invite family and friends to connect. This could be measured through, say, a follow-up survey. Finally, the impact. We want to measure the percent of clients who do not re-experience homelessness within 5 years versus some sort of baseline. Okay, so let's talk about what data we need to collect to measure this impact goal. We first have to keep track of how many households have been served. Of course, Furniture Bank is already doing this, but also to measure the impact, we need to keep track of when they were served so that we know when the 5-year threshold has been met. The next thing we'll also have to collect is client contact information. This is for the purpose of reaching out to them for the follow-up survey. On the topic of the survey, we're going to need to collect the results of the survey. Data collection may not always be internal data. Furniture Bank may not know the percent of clients that re-experience homelessness. But perhaps this data is available through some third party, a government agency, or perhaps another organization that's collecting this data and working with the same clients. The baseline data is also something that Furniture Bank will have to source from outside. These are just some of the things that would need to be collected for just this one goal. You may have thought of other pieces of data that need to be collected that we didn't talk about here. In terms of fundraising data, there is a lot of data that can be collected. This slide gives some ideas on what can be collected. However, what is possible and what is relevant will differ from organization to organization. This list is provided in your materials as well. Just as a starting point, we'd be happy to hear what sort of additions you think we can make to this list. Here we're going to talk about some of the things to consider when collecting data. So first of all, validity. Is the data valid? A simple example of this is if you're collecting the age of a client. It should be a number. So the word young, or even the word 22 spelt out, should not be considered valid data for age, because they're not numbers. Accuracy is measuring how accurate the data is. Sometimes you have no way of determining the accuracy at the time you are collecting it, but sometimes you can. Back to our age example, if someone tells you their age is 222, you could probably guess that that is an inaccurate number. You can set standards to determine a range of values that could be considered as accurate, say 18 to 99. Completeness. This is about how complete the data is. So if you're interested in collecting a complete demographic picture of a donor, you may include age, gender identity, geographic information, etc. If you're collecting only age for a particular donor, then your data isn't complete. You can measure how complete your data is by looking at how many records has all information versus the number of records missing one piece, two pieces, three pieces of data, etc. Consistency. Is the data consistent across different sources? Are donor counts in your CRM the same as your donor counts in your accounting system? The hope is that these numbers are consistent across the different sources in your organization. Uniformity. The way you are collecting data should be uniform across your systems. So what does this mean? We can go back to the CRM versus accounting system example. In your CRM, you may be collecting only a client's information, but not assigning them a standardized unique customer number. Whereas in your accounting system, you may be required to have a much more strict identification of a customer, which requires you to have a unique customer number. Your system should have a uniform way of identifying your donors. That is, a unique customer number. The last thing to consider when collecting data is privacy. A quote that I heard at a conference once, which I think applies here, is, if you can't secure it, don't collect it. Privacy and security is a major concern with data. And if you're collecting data in a way that you are not certain that the security and privacy of the information is being maintained, it may be a good idea to not collect that information. The next step in the process is data cleansing. So data cleansing is a very important step in your data strategy, but one that often gets overlooked. So what do we mean by data cleansing? This is all about having accurate data, removing duplicate records, having accurate and standard information, categorizing raw data are cleansing steps that can make the difference between making great decisions or bad mistakes. Uncleansed data can lead to misrepresentation of numbers, inaccurate reporting, poor customer experience, and missed opportunities. But the importance of data cleansing could be summed up in one simple phrase. Bad data in means bad data out. Cleaning data can help you get rid of unnecessary data and help to standardize your data so that you can perform accurate analysis. In this example, a customer record has been cleaned with the following. So first of all, the salutation was added. This can be something optional, but it can help you understand gender, if that is something you want to collect, but don't want to specifically ask for. We've also added postal code into the address and corrected the province formats. A corrected and standardized address is key for communication, but also for later analysis. Right now at Canada Helps, we're currently working on standardizing our address information for these very reasons. The record also has a corrected telephone format. There's an email ID typo that's corrected in this record. This may not be something that's simple to do for every incorrect email address, but where there are common mistakes, such as leaving out the A in Gmail, there could be very simple solutions to clean the data in an automated way. Data cleansing can be technical and arduous, but the outcome of this is important and valuable. On this slide, there are some steps that you can take to approach cleaning your data. We won't go into the details here, but more detailed explanations and examples are available in the materials provided with this webinar. One thing to consider, though, is to not go crazy with having perfectly clean data. You should come up with thresholds and standards that make sense for your needs, and make sure the data that's vital to you is clean to those standards. But you shouldn't stress too much about cleaning data that you may not ever use. Here are some common challenges with data cleaning. First, how do you correct data without losing the original data? Things like removing duplicates or invalid entries, correcting errors in the data, all mean inevitably changing the original raw data. So how do you do this without losing information? A simple best practice for this is to always have an original copy of your raw data set and a working copy that is cleaned. This way, you can always cross-reference your changes with the original and have a way to revert back to the original records if mistakes were made in the cleaning. Another challenge is the maintenance of clean data. As mentioned, data cleaning can be very time-consuming and resource-intensive. It is also something that needs to be looked after on a regular basis. So how do you do this efficiently without having to go through the cleaning steps on all your data each time new data comes in? The simplest solution to this is to identify new unclean data versus data that has already been cleaned. This could be as simple as adding a field to your data once it has been cleaned to indicate that it has been cleaned. This way, you will only spend time and resources cleaning any records that have not been flagged as already cleaned. In order to collect your data and clean it, you will also need to store it somewhere. So let's talk about data storage. Regardless of how you are collecting your data, you need to have a safe and secure place to store your data. This could mean converting paper records to digital copies, storing spreadsheets on your laptop or external hard drive, relational databases such as Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server, CRM systems, or even cloud storage. The appropriate storage strategy is important when you consider how and when you need to retrieve the data, what sort of reporting and analysis you want to do with the data, and of course, the privacy and security of all the information that has been collected. Shannon is going to go through some ways of storing data.
Hi, I'm Shannon Craig, and I'm the Chief Marketing and Product Officer at Canada Helps. I'm going to give Sean a short break and speak to the next part of the data framework, data storage. 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years alone. As transactions and communications move online, we have the power to track it all. Data storage and management has become incredibly important. Let's start with this brilliant quote from Albert Einstein. Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. A 2017 Digital Universe study stated that just 0.5% of the data we collect is analyzed. It's important to be strategic in the data you collect, remembering each question in an online donation flow is an invitation for that donor to decide not to complete their donation. Remembering collecting too much data can increase complexity of the analysis and actually put us at risk of reaching the true insights to improve our programs. Those are the larger risks, but there's also the cost associated with storage. Regardless of how you're collecting your data, you need to have a safe and secure place to store your data. The appropriate storage strategy needs to be considered based on what you need to do with the data. How frequently will you need to access it? How quickly do you need to be able to access it? What sort of reporting and analysis do you want to do with it? and of course, in consideration of the privacy and security that the type of information you're collecting requires. So, there are three key places for storing data. Cloud storage is when you host data in a third-party facility. If you're simply saving and storing your database or application in a third-party facility like Amazon Web Services, it's pure play cloud storage. But in addition to that storage, it encompasses use of software to get your data into that service. It's known as software as a service, SaaS. An example of a SaaS offering is what you might be using for your email, something like use of MailChimp or Constant Contact. Second type of storage is physical databases. This typically refers to services that your organization owns and manages on-site. And third, we all have data stored locally on our personal computers and external hard drives. The trend for organizations of all sizes is to use the cloud. On-site physical databases are increasingly used only by sophisticated organizations with security experts on staff. And really, it's those organizations that are dealing with the highest, most sensitive data that really could cause serious harm to customers or operations of the organization if there was a data breach. For smaller organizations, the trend is less about putting custom applications and databases into the cloud and more about using software provided as a service. Why is that? SaaS providers deliver innovation and continuous improvement and invest heavily in security expertise. These are essential to their continued success, and leveraging these services provides you better tools and allows you to focus on your mission and leave the software development and security concerns to the experts. SaaS models typically allow you to pay as you go and provide you the flexibility you need to leave at any time should you choose. Also, SaaS apps are becoming increasingly flexible, so you can actually do small amounts of customization so that they can really work for the way you need to work as an organization. From our Canada Help survey, the key data management tools our charity clients are collecting data in today are really their CRM, where they manage donors, volunteers, and other supporter data, their email marketing platform, and their financial and accounting services. You can see that there are still many small to medium-sized charities not using true platforms that can unleash the tracking and analysis capabilities made possible in a digital world. Most notably, you see this with the high percentage of charities using Excel to manage their supporters or personal email to send marketing emails. So for those of you using these today, using your personal email to send emails, you're not alone, and the next slide is for you. With today's security and privacy laws, you need to ensure you have compliance systems in place. Here you can see that the leading CRM, email, and financial systems used by charities are available as software as a service. Many players started off providing licensed software for deployment on your premises, but most of these now today also offer a software as a service offering. In selecting your platform, look around. There are many software as a service offerings that are now available that really cater to smaller organizations, offering simple, intuitive interfaces. And what I'm increasingly excited about is how they continue to enhance their reporting capabilities, providing more ready access to the insights we need to improve results. Without us all having to do the actual analysis, they're helping us to get at those analyses and doing some of the work for us. So look for that as you're choosing new platforms.
Once you've prepared your data through data collection, cleaning, and storage, you're ready to analyze and execute on your data strategy. Analyzing your data means mining it, manipulating it, aggregating it, and inevitably inspecting the results for insights. Really, this is how you answer your business questions you started with when you were planning your business strategy. The results of analysis will help you make business decisions, which is why it is essential to take the preparation steps of collecting, cleaning, and storing your data seriously. Remember, bad data in means bad data. Some examples of business questions that may need answers are, how valuable are my donors to my overall revenue? Are there donors that are more valuable than others? An analysis of your donor data may reveal the answers to these questions, giving you a lifetime value of your donor base and a way to segment your donors into groups of donors who have higher lifetime value than others. The analysis stage is also often the part of the data process where you decide to revisit your data strategy. The answers to your original business questions may not be what you were hoping for, or may bring up new questions. For example, are there ways to increase the value of donors with lower lifetime values? While analysis informs your strategic decisions, execution allows you to act on these decisions by leveraging your data to enable initiatives. Your data will feed into your strategies to, say, target high-value donors for particular campaigns. Applying data to these decisions and tactics help to take away any doubt about programs that may have been developed subjectively. May also give reason to eliminate these programs. We surveyed charities, and the following are ways that they are currently leveraging their data in analysis and execution. So here are some examples of analysis or execution related to each of these areas. So 71% said that they were doing some sort of social media engagements. This could be something like measuring how much of your donor base interacts with your charity through social media, how much revenue can be attributed to social media engagements. 52% said they were doing website analytics tracking. This is something where you could be testing whether there are particular pages or content on your website that are visited more frequently than others. Does this traffic convert to donations at a higher rate than traffic on other pages? Answering questions like that. Financial measurement from a business perspective, 47% said they were doing that. So what is the financial health of your organization in the current period versus some previous periods? Determine areas that are over or under budget. You can use data to forecast finances for future periods.
Hi, this is Shannon again. I'm going to share 3 examples of the reporting tools we use on the marketing and fundraising side at Canada Helps. Google Analytics is by far my favorite analytics tool, and it's free. It allows you to easily see where your traffic is coming from, what is the demographic makeup, what technology they're using, and what they're doing on your site. These insights give you the power to figure out where you're underperforming versus industry benchmarks and where you're losing visitors, by type of visitor, what device they're on, and so forth. Essentially, it's allowing you to know exactly what you need to do to improve and get more results. It is an incredibly powerful tool just using the out-of-the-box reports. However, I do encourage you, once you get comfortable using those out-of-box reports, to take advantage of all the additional capabilities. For example, dashboards. We have many set up as they save us tons of time. We have one to see results of our donor emails, one for our charity emails, one for our social results, one for top participating charities on Giving Tuesday, and others specific to e-commerce conversion. Goals and goal visualization is another powerful tool that's available to you. Create these so you can test and optimize your donation paths, email sign-up flow, and more. Lastly, Google Experiments. If you're more advanced, try Google Experiments to A/B test key website pages like your homepage. It helps you to identify what is the best message to put in front of your visitors to your homepage. What's the right call to action? What are the right steps to take them through to get the action you're looking for? We use Sprout Social to manage all our social activity in one place. It provides out-of-the-box reporting at the aggregate level and by channel, so we can easily track things like audience growth, message volume in terms of what we're sending, what we're receiving, impressions, engagements. The next step, we go back to GA, Google Analytics, to see our conversion data. We are increasingly spending more time in our social analytics data. Being active on social is a real investment, and it's only with looking at the analytics that we can best balance the effort to results ratio. As much as we use the analytics tools, tracking is so important, we also use good old Excel to track detailed results over time. Here is an example of how we do this for our emails, pulling data out of our email platform. This report contains all the key metrics from our donor emails. I love this spreadsheet. As we plan our end-of-year campaign, the first thing I do is revisit what we did before, test results, our takeaways at the time for next year. I also use it to see the bigger picture. Open rates, unsubscribe rates, donation revenue from our emails. What is the bigger picture trend that I might miss if I'm always looking and thinking one email to the next? This doesn't take long in terms of capturing this information, and it's not hard. It just takes discipline. But in our experience, it really rewards us, allowing us to effectively optimize our programs.
40% said they were doing email performance tracking. So this could be measuring how many recipients of an email campaign have opened the email, how many have clicked through to your intended outcome. You can measure how these people translate to revenue and what your return on investment is on your campaign. 33% said they were doing donor segmentation. This is the use of analysis of donor data to understand behaviors of various groups of donors. Data can guide you on how donors behave similarly, which can lead you to decisions on how to communicate differently with different segments of your donor base. I think Shannon's doing financial measurements, program impact measurements, and paid ad tracking. 16% said they were doing marketing analytics. So data can help you build donor-centric modeling such as recency, frequency, monetary, or RFM scoring to help guide your fundraising spending. Donor lifetime value models to help you understand which donors are more valuable to your long-term fundraising than others. Churn analysis to help you understand which donors are no longer making donations, and even build predictive models to determine the propensity of a donor to churn. So you can take preventative actions to save that donor before they actually leave. The final piece to a healthy data strategy is measurement and reporting. So the data that you've collected, cleaned, stored, and analyzed can also be used to measure the performance of your business. Tracking key metrics will allow you to keep a pulse on your business and allow you to make the right decisions. While these metrics may inform specific members of your organization, they can also be reported to various internal and external stakeholders. Impact reports, financial reporting, fundraising reports, campaign performance dashboards, these are all examples of important data reporting. There are various financial reporting tools available commercially. Like many other data tools, it's often prudent to use the right size tool for your needs. At Canada Helps, we use SAP for our financial reporting. But Sage and QuickBooks are two tools that are more commonly used by charities. Of course, financial reporting will be specific to each organization. As you can see here, Canada Helps reports revenue broken down by our direct-to-donor side of our business versus our charity clients. We also break out revenue by donation types. Most charities report their finances at the program or fund level. Finally, let's talk about key performance indicators, or KPIs. These are metrics that will help you keep on top of how effectively your organization is achieving key objectives. From a data perspective, you can think of your data in two ways when thinking about KPIs. There's dimensions, which are ways to categorize your data. And then there's measures, which are numerical values that can be aggregated to quantify your dimensions and give them meaning. Really just putting some numbers to your dimensions. So here's an example of some of the dimensions we keep track of at Canada Helps. Charity registration tier. So this tells us which level of account a charity has signed up for. Charitable category. This gives us an indication of the type of charity or what a charity's objectives are. We have 10 categories that charities can self-identify as being under, with 160 or so subcategories under those 10. So an example would be animal charities or arts and culture charities or religious charities or social service charities, just as an example of the high-level categories that we have. Geography can also be seen as a dimension. So cutting your data by different regions, provinces, cities, or even down to the neighborhood level may be useful ways of looking at your data. Time can be considered a dimension. KPIs can be measured for particular date ranges and against previous date ranges that make sense to use for comparison. For example, last week versus the previous week versus the same week last year. Rank. So we may want to rank charities by how many donors they have, or by the average donation amount, or by overall revenue. Although a rank is a numerical value, it is a dimension because it's categorizing the data. Product type. So we may want to measure KPIs by the type of product that a charity is using. In terms of measures, here are some examples. Registration count. So how many charities have actually registered for a Canada Helps account? Revenue, or number of donations, or number of donors. Obviously, this is measuring how much money was raised, how many donations were made, and how many donors made those donations through Canada Helps products. Count of number of new donors or number of repeat donors. One thing to note about this is that this could also be accomplished through dimensions. So we could categorize each donor as either being new or repeat, and then just measure the number of donors. Like many data and analysis concepts, there can be multiple ways of getting to the same answer. Okay, so finally, how do you use these dimensions and measures to report KPIs? So at Canada Helps, we're interested in the overall number of registered charities in any given week. So our first KPI could be just a count of charity registrations. That would be the measure. In the last week, which would be the time dimension. But that one number alone is not very useful without context. So we may also want to look at the same measure for a different time period, say the same week last year, or maybe the previous week. This way, we can calculate a few new measures. So we can measure the week over week growth, last week versus the previous week. And we can measure the year over year growth, last week versus the same week last year. All of this gives us a good indication of how well we are performing on registrations this week. We can then take all of that and break the measures down further by registration tier, by charitable category, and by province. And in fact, the report you see on your screen does just that, and is reviewed weekly by various team members at Canada Helps. So everyone knows how we are performing and can make decisions based on this information. What we use for this report is Tableau, which is a business intelligence or BI software package that helps with organizing, transforming, and visualizing data to create useful reports that can be automatically refreshed and emailed out to the right people. There are other tools available that do similar things. A couple of them that I've used in the past is ClickView and TIBCO Spotfire, which are similar BI tools to Tableau. Another popular option right now is Microsoft's Power BI, which integrates very well with Excel. But you don't necessarily need to go outside of your comfort zone to create meaningful reports. Lots of organizations already have Microsoft Office, and you can build both simple and sophisticated KPI reports using Excel. If Excel is simple to you, readily available, and capable of doing what you need it to do in terms of reporting, and likely comes at no incremental cost to you, since you already have a Microsoft Office license, why not use it for your KPI reporting? Like much of what we've talked about today, the key is to determine the right size solution for the problem you're trying to solve. And that is one of the things that we want to leave you with. As we recap what we've talked about today, we'd like to reiterate that you should build a data strategy that is right sized for your organization. The process is iterative, so you can always revisit your data strategy later on if you do want to make it more complex. Once your data strategy is in place, prepare your data by collecting the data you need, making sure that data gets cleaned, and storing your data appropriately so that it's accessible and secure. Finally, you'll want to execute your data strategy by performing analysis to answer your questions. Leverage your data to execute initiatives based on the results of your analyses. And of course, determine ways to measure your organization's key performance indicators and report those KPIs to the appropriate audiences, internally and externally. And there you have it. We hope you found the webinar useful and you'll be able to apply it at your organization. We do encourage you to watch the case study on tracking and using impact data and the case study on data and fundraising. After that, what we suggest is that you download the data action plan and the slides from this webinar and get started on your own data strategy. If you have any questions, please reach out through the web form and we'd be happy to help. Thanks.